Hello and welcome to the Advanced Remediation class. This is going to be what we're covering today. We have associating table cells with headers, merge cells in a table, tables with lists and bullets, creating table of content links, creating a fillable PDF, extracting difficult pages, and lastly we are going to cover more about the content panel. So getting started, we're going to be doing associating table cells with headers. And to do that, we're just going to open up our Prepare for Accessibility tool. Then we're going to open up our fixed reading order. I'm going to go ahead and move that box. First things first is I'm going to right click on my table. And then choose Table Editor. And then I'm going to select all of my headers by clicking and dragging a box inside of them. And then I'll right click and then choose Auto Generate Header Cell. First I have to make it a header cell. And then I'm going to do that again. And then I'm going to choose Auto Generate Header Cell IDs. Once I do that, I want to go ahead and check all of the cells that I just made header cell IDs for. And to do that, I'm going to go into Table Cell Properties. And then I'm going to, in the ID column, there should be a name. In this case, it's going to be a row 1, column 1 last. And then next is going to be first, and then middle, and then license number. As you can tell, it only cut off the NO part of license number. But when we add it back in, we don't want to continue to keep it as NO. We want to fully type out number, as if something were to read over this, it would read out to the reader as NO instead of number. And then we'll click OK. Then moving on to type. And then issue date. As you can see in the issue date, it cut off the date part, so we'll just add in the TE, and then we'll click OK. Same thing with expiration date, so we're going to fully type this out as well. And then lastly, we have discipline. Just add in the NE. Now, when we want to apply our columns to our table headers, all we're going to do is select a column by clicking and dragging a box through them. And then I'll right click on one of the cells, choose Table Cell Properties. In this Properties box, I'm going to click on the plus icon to the right of Associate Header Cell IDs. And then I'm going to assign it its correct header. In this case, it's going to be last, and then click OK, and then click OK again. Same thing with first. And then middle. Then license number. And then type. Say you put in the wrong header cell. All you have to do is click on the header cell ID and then choose the minus icon and it'll get rid of it. And then you can just add in another one. And then we'll click OK. On to issue date. And then expiration date. And then discipline. And then that is going to be it for associating table cells with headers. Moving on, we're going to go on to merge cells in a table. As you can see, we have this complex table where we have health insurance that covers the entirety of the 3 columns, and then we have PPO and HMO, which cover 3 rows. So first things first, I'm going to tag each one of these items inside of the table as a table cell. And I'm doing that by double clicking on each one of these. Now say if I were to drag and I grabbed a little bit too much, I can get rid of the excess by holding Control on my keyboard and then dragging over the item that I want to get rid of, and it'll deselect it. Alright, now that I have all of that tagged, I'm going to want to open up my accessibility tags on the right hand side. And as you can see, we have a whole bunch of table data. So what I want to do is I want to add in a table tag and then move all of my table data inside of that. To do that, I'll just right click on tags, create new tag, and in the type dropdown, I'm going to change it from article to table, and then I'll click OK. Now, to move all of my table data inside of the table, I'm just going to click on the top table data, hold Shift on my keyboard, and then click on the bottom one. And this will select all the information in between those two options. And then I'll click and drag the top table data, and then I'll just move it inside of my table. Now that I have all my table data inside of my table, I want to add in enough table rows for this information. In this case, there's 7 table rows, one being health insurance, and then one being office copay and $10, out-of-pocket maximum and $1,500 and $27.50 being another one, family and $350 also being another one, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to go ahead and create seven table rows by right-clicking on table, selecting new tag, changing it from table to table row, and I'm going to do this 7 times. Alrighty, now that I have my 7 table rows, I'm just going to select them all again by holding Shift, and then move them inside of my table. Now that I have my table data rows inside of the table, I'm going to move the corresponding table data into its table row. So for example, this first TD is going to be the health insurance, and I'm going to want to move that inside my top table row. And then when it comes to PPO, office copay and $10, I'm going to move those 3 table datas into one row. And then each of these other rows are going to have 2. So it's going to be out-of-pocket maximum, $1,500 and $27.50. I'll do the same thing with the other 2. And then I'm going to repeat this for the HMO portion. So the first 3 are going to go into the first table row. And then I'll move in the rest of this information. All right, now that I have all this information inside of table rows, I need to apply my table headers. In this particular table, there's only 3 table headers, one being health insurance, one being PPO, and one being HMO. In order to change these into table headers, all I'm going to do is double click on my table data, change my D to an H, and then press enter. I'm going to do that with PPO and HMO as well. And now that I have my table headers applied, I can now change which of these headers apply to which rows or even columns. To do that, all I'm going to do is right-click in my table, choose Table Editor, and as you can see, we have 4 rows that are not fully covered, indicated by the pink versus gray. In order to do that, I'm going to work from the bottom, so I'm working with HMO first. I'm going to right-click, choose Table Cell Properties. I'm going to change my row span to 3 because this is going to cover 3 rows. And then I'm going to change my scope to row, and then I'm going to click OK. It's going to ask me if I want to change the table. I'm saying yes. And as you can see, now all three of these rows down here are covered by this one, HMO. I'm going to do the same thing with PPO. Change the row span to 3, change the scope to 3 or to row, and then click OK. And now that I have that set, all that's left is to make this health insurance cover the entire table. So I'm going to right click, choose table cell properties. Instead of row span, because health insurance covers columns, we want to make sure that it's covering the columns. So in this case, I want my column span to be 3 and my scope to be column, and then click OK. And now that I have that done, this table is now remediated. Moving on, we have tables with lists and bullets. And as you can see inside this document, we have a table that does not have any header row, but it has a paragraph and what looks like some bulleted lists. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this information outside of our table tag so that it exists as just paragraph and list tags. In order to do that, I'm going to open up my accessibility tags panel, locate the table, and then I'm going to drop this down. And first I'm going to drop down T head, and then table row, and then table header. And as you can see, I found my first paragraph text. But I also want to drop down this other table header, and I have my list text. If I hold Control on my keyboard, I can select both of these, and then click and drag them out of the table. And I just drop them outside. And now that I have all of these empty, I can go ahead and delete my table header. Next is going to be the T-body. I'm going to drop this down until I find the base information, such as my paragraph tags and my list tags. And then I'm going to select all of these using a combination of Shift and Control on my keyboard. And then I'm also going to take these out of the table. Now that I know my table is empty, I can just right-click on my table and then choose Delete Tag. But as you can see, the table hasn't updated on the document. In order for this information to update, something else needs to be tagged. So we're going to just re-tag our title. And there you go. The table has disappeared and our information is now just paragraphs and list. Next is going to be table of content links. This one's pretty simple. All we're going to do is be adding links to these lines so that when we click on them, it would take us to its corresponding page. For example, Northern Nevada is supposed to go to page 5. So in order to add these links, all we're going to do is just highlight this text, right-click, and choose Create Link. And our link action is going to be set to go to a page view, and then we're going to click Next. Now before I click Set Link, I'm going to want to scroll down to page 5. And then click Set Link. Now if I were to click on this row up here, it would take me to page 5. You can also do this with multiple lines of text, so I'll do the rest of page 5. Highlight it, right-click, choose Create Link, go to a page view, then hit Next. And then now I have to scroll down to page 5, and then click Set Link. Now if I were to click on anything inside of this first page that is on page 5, it'll take me to page 5. Say I want to get rid of a link, all I would have to do is just highlight this information again, right-click, and choose Delete Link. Now if I click anywhere in here, it's not going to let me go to page 5. And then that is it for creating content links. So moving on, we're going to do creating a fillable PDF. In order to create a fillable PDF, we're just going to go to View More. And then we're going to click on Prepare a Form. We want to make sure that Auto Detect Form field is on. If it is off, go ahead and click on Change. and then make sure that automatically detect form field box is checked underneath the general options. And then we'll click OK. Once we have that on, we're just going to click on Create Form. Now this will automatically create form fields for this page. And as you can see, it also gave each of these form fields a name. But as I said earlier, we want to make sure that abbreviations such as NO are spelled out fully so that the reader knows that it is rather number instead of NO. So what I'm going to do here is going to click on license number, choose properties, I'm going to change the name from NO to number, and then I'm going to select all of this information and copy it, because in the tooltip is also going to be red. So what we're going to do is, because this is a form, we want it to sound like it's prompting the user to enter an information. So instead, I'll put in enter, and then I'll just add in license number. That way it's prompting the user to enter license number. And then we'll click close. Every form field is going to need a tooltip. So if you are going to be remediating a document with forms on it, just note that you'll have to add a tooltip if they don't have one already. Now, say if you add a document that has e-fillable form but doesn't want the signature to be e-signed and instead wants it printed, we can just right-click on the signature box designated by this orange arrow in the top left of it, and then we can just select delete. Now, say if you wanted to add in a button for submitting the form, we can just click on this OK button on the far left, and it's going to bring up this ghost. This ghost is going to be where it's going to be placed when you click. In this case, I'll place it in the bottom right. And then I'm going to right-click on my button properties on the right-hand side. In the name, I'm going to name it Submit Form. And in the tooltip, I'm going to give it Click to Submit Form. In the options, we also want it to give it a label. The label is going to be what shows on the button itself. So I'm going to say Submit Form as well here. And then in the actions, we want to change our select action from execute a menu item to submit a form at the bottom. Once you have that selected, go ahead and click add. And it's going to ask you to enter in a URL or an email. You can do either which one. In this case, for example, I'll just put in our website, ada.nv.gov, and then click OK. Now, if I were to click on this button, it would submit this form out to ada.nv.gov. In order to delete the button, all you have to do is right-click it on the right-hand side underneath the Fields box, and just select Delete. Say I want to add in a button to reset my form. We're going to do the same thing. Just go ahead and get a button. Put it up here in the top left or anywhere you might like it. And then again, go into the properties. And on the select action, we're going to change the submit a form to reset a form. Go ahead and add a label. And then in the general, we want to add in the name and also the tooltip. So click to reset form. Now say if I added information into here. I forgot to add in my actions. So reset a form, click add. In this case, I want it to reset the entirety of my document. So I want to keep all these fields checked and then click OK. If you didn't want to get rid of some of them, you can uncheck them from that box. Okay, and then now that I have that set, if I were to add in my name to this licensee name box, I can just click on reset form and it'll delete it. And then I'm just going to go ahead and delete this button as well. And then that is creating a fillable PDF. So moving on, we have extracting difficult pages in a PDF. And as you can see, our first page is tagged, our second page is tagged, but our third page isn't. And if I try to tag this, say I'll tag this as text paragraph, it's not going to do anything. So when it comes to stuff like this, it normally means that our document is bugged or the page is bugged. In this case, I know that the page is bugged because everything else is tagged. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to extract this page outside of the document, edit it by itself, and then put it back into our original document, and then hopefully it'll pass all of our issues. So to do that, we're going to close out of this Prepare for Accessibility tool, go to Organize Pages, and then we're going to click on this Extract Pages button next to the trash can. We're just going to click on Extract. And then from here, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click on Prepare for Accessibility and then automatically tag PDF. Go ahead and open up the fixed reading order. And here we have our page tagged. Now, while I have our page isolated, I want to try and check for accessibility because it'll be easier to work on this page by itself than it is to work on this page in the document. So in order to do that, I'm going to need to save my document. Excuse me. Here we are. And because this is page 3 from the original document, I'm going to say it's page 3 from extracting pages, and then click Save. Now that I've saved this page, I can go ahead and run my accessibility check. And as you can see, we have no issues except for the 4 issues that we have up here. The logical reading order and color contrast, as stated previously, are always going to show up whether or not you've passed them already. This is basically just saying that Adobe isn't going to check for these, so they need to be manually checked at all times. The other 2 issues, primary language and title, because this is a page separated from the original document, you're not going to have to worry about these 2, because once this page is put back into the original document, it's going to inherit the document's title and primary language. So now that we have that, we can go ahead and go back to the original. Go ahead and delete the original page, and then insert from File, choose page 3, and then we want to make sure it's set to location after, and we're going to set to page 2. This way it's going to be putting our page in after page 2, and then click OK. Now if I went back to my accessibility tool, I can still see that it's tagged, and if I checked for accessibility, those primary language and title issues disappeared. That's it for extracting difficult pages. So lastly, we have the content panel. So in the content panel, we're just going to go ahead and go onto this right-hand side, open up the content, and open up our documents content, and then I'm going to open up page 1. The biggest thing we want to worry about inside of the content panel are going to be these empty texts and our paths. Empty text, we can go ahead and delete these out of the document because this is information that is invisible to our eyes because it's just enters or spaces that have been here when the document was made. So we can go ahead and get rid of these by right-clicking and deleting, or you can hold Control and select multiple at a time, and then click Delete. Next is these paths. Paths are going to be anything that is like line art, objects, or underlines, any of that sort. So like, for example, this underline on purpose is going to be a path. The box around this document is also a path. But because this makes up like structure in our document, we don't want to delete these, as if I were to delete these, they disappear from the document entirely. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create artifact. So I'm going to select my path, right click, and choose create artifact. We're going to go ahead and keep our default options and click OK. And I'm going to do this with the rest of our paths. So I'm going to create artifact, and then I'm going to hold shift and grab all of them and create artifact. Now all we have left is this text, and this is just the page number. Now, as a remediator, it is up to you to decide whether or not you would like the page number to be tagged as text, or if you would like the page number to be created as an artifact. In this case, I'll tag this one as text for now, and then I'll delete the empty text. But in page 2, I can just go ahead and artifact it if I wanted to, and then click OK. And delete the empty text. And then paths again have to be artifacted. And then lastly, we have page 3. I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing. Create artifact, and then click OK. And then that's the end of the content panel advanced portion. And that is also the end of the advanced training class. Thank you for your time.